Whispers in the Moonlight. Chapter 1. The Encounter. The party hummed with quiet conversation, laughter, and the clink of champagne glasses. But Elise barely noticed. She was drawn to the terrace where the evening breeze carried the scent of jasmine and the moon cast silver beams across the garden below. She leaned against the cold stone railing, sipping her drink, letting the quiet wash over her. "You seem lost in thought," came a deep, smooth voice behind her. She turned, startled but intrigued. A man stood a few steps away, his tailored suit catching the faint glow of the moonlight. His presence was magnetic, his gaze warm yet unreadable. He held out his hand. "I'm Julian," he said. "Elise," she replied, placing her hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle, lingering just long enough to send a spark up her arm. "What brings you out here?" he asked, stepping closer, his voice low and intimate, as though they were the only two people in the world. "Just needed a moment to breathe," she said. "And you?" "Following the most interesting person in the room," he said, his smile inviting but not presumptuous. The words hung in the air, a current passing between them. Without realizing it, Elise found herself smiling back. Whispers in the Moonlight. Chapter 2. The Dance. Minutes later, Elise led him back inside. The music had slowed. The melody was sultry and inviting. Julian extended a hand again, and this time she did not hesitate. He pulled her gently onto the dance floor, his hand settling on the small of her back. Their movements were seamless, as though they had danced together 1,000 times before. His touch was light but possessive. His fingers brushed her skin in a way that sent shivers down her spine. She felt herself relax into him, the space between them narrowing with every step. "Tell me, Elise," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "Do you always let strangers sweep you off your feet?" "Only the ones who know how to lead," she replied, her voice teasing but breathless. He chuckled, a low, rich sound that resonated through her. For a moment, the rest of the room disappeared. There was only him, his scent, a mix of cedar and something darker, and the heat of his hand on her back, holding her steady in a world that seemed to tilt. Whispers in the Moonlight. Chapter 3. The Terrace. The dancing ended, but neither of them wanted to leave. Julian's hand lingered on her waist, his thumb drawing a lazy circle that sent her pulse racing. "Shall we get some air?" he suggested. She nodded, letting him guide her back to the terrace. The moonlight was brighter now, the garden bathed in a soft ethereal glow. Julian turned to face her, his expression more serious, more intense. "Tell me to stop," he said softly, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, "and I will." Elise held his gaze, her breath catching with the raw vulnerability in his words. Instead of answering, she leaned into him, her lips brushing in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepened as they both gave in. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer, and she melted into him. The cool night air contrasting with the heat that built between them. The kiss was a conversation, a meeting of desires that neither of them could put into words. Whispers in the Moonlight. Chapter 4. The Room. The transition from the terrace to his suite was seamless, a blur of whispering memories and stolen touches. The door clicked shut behind them, and Julian turned to her, his gaze dark with need. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rasped that sent a thrill through her. "Yes," Elise whispered, her hands finding the lapels of his jacket and sliding it from his shoulders. Clothes fell away piece by piece, each layer revealing more of him, more of her, until there was nothing left to hide. Julian took his time, his hands exploring her body with a reverence that made her feel like the most precious thing in the world. His lips followed, tracing a path of fire down her back, her shoulders, and her curves. Elite let herself get lost in the sensation. In the way he moved, the way he whispered her name felt like a prayer. Every touch, every kiss, every word, every whisper brought her closer to the edge until they both surrendered completely. Whispers in the Moonlight, Chapter 5, The Afterglow. The room was quiet now, the only sound their mingled breathing as they lay back tangled together. Julian's fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, his touch as gentle as it had been insistent before. Elise rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. She felt safe. She felt cherished, as though the world outside didn't exist. "You're incredible," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "So are you," she replied, her voice soft but sure. The moonlight continued to stream through the curtains, casting a silver glow over them. They didn't speak again, content to simply be, to be wrapped in the warmth of each other and the magic of the night. Thank you for spending time with us to travel through a moment of imagination. As we close, remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share our content with friends who might love it too. As your support goes a long way to help us continue creating these immersive stories, consider donating using the link below. We appreciate every bit of your help. We look forward to seeing you in the next story.